So here we have Paul offering a prayer to the congregation at Ephesus. He's teaching them about prayer and how prayer places us before the power and the majesty of God. To Paul, prayer is central to his life. Not just a cast-off list of pious sentiments about God that will impress others. Not just something we rattle off from memory. As I was studying this passage and another passage on prayer in the letter of James, I recalled a moment several summers ago when my son took me to the College World Series as a birthday present. This was something he and I had talked about for years. And here we were, sitting in a stadium in Omaha, Nebraska. We were watching the Arkansas Razorbacks playing the Michigan Wolverines. Sounds like two animals fighting over a carcass for dinner. But really, it was a baseball game. And neither of us particularly cared who won. But here we were, sitting in the sun, watching two of the top baseball teams in the country playing. I had my Dodger cap on and he had his Oakland A's cap on. For our family, it just doesn't get any better than this. Now, it was sometime late in the game, and the game was tied. We happened to be sitting deep in the crowd of Arkansas fans. They came with hats and gloves and shirts and coordinated cheers that they launched into during strikes and balls and hits and outs. And in between pitches, my son and I chatted with a guy who I was sitting next to, and a real serious Razorback fan. He lived in Little Rock and delivered stuff for Amazon, and I told him I was a pastor since at the time I was working at the Concord Presbyterian Church. But he wanted Arkansas to win. And at one point, Arkansas had the bases loaded, 2 outs, and he turned to me and asked, "Would you pray for a home run?" Now that's a prayer request I had never received. My son chuckled, so I said, "Sure." "You will? That would be super. I'll buy you and your son a beer and a hot dog. That would be so super." My son nudged me and said, "Go for it, Dad." Now, none of us may believe that our prayers are that powerful. Oh, sometimes we wish they were. We, of course, we pray the Lord's Prayer, which says, "Thy will be done." But let's be honest. How many of us have thought about slipping something into our prayers about us? Maybe not a home run. Maybe not an IRS mistake that gives us a couple of $1,000 in our return. But come on. You can admit it. You've thought about slipping something into your prayers like that. But we don't, of course. I mean, that's what they did in the Bible. But these days, how silly is that? Like God is actually going to reach down into our lives and specifically give us something or fix something that we cannot fix ourselves. But last week, when I was reading the letter from James, I noticed there was a line that said, "You do not have because you do not ask." And I wondered, how many times do we pray but do not really believe that God is really and truly listening? I mean, that's what the people in the Bible did. Elijah prayed for rain, and it rained. I mean, he had to pray for seven times, but still, he prayed for rain, and it rained. Well, that may have been practical in Elijah's time, or even in Jesus' time. But there were only 45 million people in the Roman Empire when Jesus was roaming the earth. And not all of them prayed at the same time. But we're living in the 21st century. There's something like 7 billion people. Now let's say a tenth of them prayed. That's still a lot of prayers for God to keep track of. That's like 700 million prayers. I can imagine this huge computer up there in the sky that keeps track of all these prayers and gives God a printout so he can go through and figure out which prayer I got to answer this one. But seriously, James does have a point. What is a prayer? What is a prayer really?